So do you mean that you would fully eliminate the FBI, or would you reform it?
So I'm going to be very candid about this. I don't think reform of that agency is actually possible at this stage. It has 60 years of rot sitting under it. You cannot reform it. I think you have to shut it down.
Well, as president, you will have the chance to nominate some judges, and that is so important that we have good judges who won't legislate from the bench. How will you choose the judges for our federal courts, including the Supreme Court? What will you be looking for?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question, Brenna, because I am the only candidate in this cycle, and I hope that, and I expect the others will also do the same, hopefully soon. I've released a full list of potential Supreme Court nominees and federal appellate court nominees to be really clear about the kinds of judges we will be appointing. They have to share my originalist understanding of the Constitution, not making up the law as they go along. Interpret the Constitution as it actually exists. And one of the key areas of the litmus test that I used for every judge on that list was to make sure that they share my fundamental skepticism of the existence of the administrative state itself. There are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. Yet that is the unconstitutional 4th branch, the shadow government in the deep state of those 3-letter agencies that's actually spewing out the regulations that hamper our economy, the regulations that Congress never actually authorized, sucking the air and the lifeblood out of our constitutional republic. So anybody I put on that Supreme Court will share my view and conviction, as I believe 6 of the current justices actually do, that the U.S. president can shut down agencies like the FBI or the U.S. Department of Education that should not exist, that the U.S. president can lay off 75% of the federal bureaucrats staffing the federal workforce today, that the U.S. president can rescind a majority of the federal regulations and executive orders that were unconstitutional pursuant to the Supreme Court standard in West Virginia versus EPA, which came down right around the same time as the Dobbs decision. Every one of those justices we appoint will share that conviction in common. That's how we actually get our country back. And to tell you the truth, when we actually do shut down the administrative state, Brenna, as painful as it will be for me, I hope we are sued, I expect we will be, to take it to the Supreme Court so that we can then codify that view of the Constitution into judicial precedent so that the next president that comes after me doesn't have his hands tied in the same way. That is how we drive change on the timescales of history, and that's why the court is so important. Thank you.
I want to give you a chance to clarify this one, because as a prosecutor, I just have to tell you, I do see a role for a good FBI, not what we have now in the Washington, D.C. office where they're political, but they serve an important role stopping the drug cartel and other important law enforcement functions. So do you mean that you would fully eliminate the FBI, or would you reform it?
So I'm going to be very candid about this. I don't think reform of that agency is actually possible at this stage. It has 60 years of rot sitting under it. You cannot reform it. I think you have to shut it down. But this is more than a slogan to me. This is deeply practical. So actually on Wednesday, this last week, we actually laid out a clear plan, very practical plan with unprecedented detail at the America First Policy Institute in D.C., laying out how we would do it, the legal authority for doing it, the fact that there are redundant agencies. 20,000 of those bureaucrats work in the back office of the J. Edgar Hoover building at the FBI in Washington, D.C. They're going to have to go home and find honest work in the private sector. 15,000 of them are agents on the front lines, and I'm very practical about this. They're doing good work. But we will move them to the U.S. Marshals, which has been much more effective at fighting child trafficking. Move them to the DEA to fight the fentanyl epidemic across this country. Move them to the Financial Crimes Network at the U.S. Treasury, where they have much more specialization than they do today. So this is at once a way of fighting corruption in the FBI, saving taxpayer money, but also even being more effective at enforcing the very laws that we have on the books. That's why we have to put the executive power back in the duly elected representative of the executive government rather than the unelected bureaucrats. That's how I will govern. Thank you.